Worldcomedue. Elite Children's Classics.
The Wizard of Oz. In an empty, dusty, gray part of Kansas, a little girl named Dorothy lived on a farm with her Uncle Henry and Aunt Em. The two older people had once been bright and young, but the sun and wind had left them empty and gray too. Dorothy, however, had a small dog called Toto, who made her laugh and kept her rosy and gay. One day an ugly wind, called a tornado, came roaring across the prairie. Dorothy's aunt and uncle rushed to their underground room, calling for her to follow. Toto was hiding under the bed, and when Dorothy finally caught him, it was too late. With Toto in her arms, she climbed into bed and fell asleep. Meantime, the wind whirled closer and closer and lifted the house off the ground, carrying it away. After some time, Dorothy woke with a shock because the house had landed with a bump. She peeked out of the door and could hardly believe her eyes. The countryside was filled with colorful flowers and singing birds. 3 little men and an old woman, no bigger than Dorothy, were whispering excitedly. The men were dressed in blue, and the woman's white gown was sprinkled with stars which shone like diamonds. They all wore pointed hats with bells around the brims. When the lady saw Dorothy, she spoke in a sweet voice. "Welcome to the land of Munchkins, my dear. We thank you for killing the wicked witch of the East." Dorothy replied, "You are very kind, but there must be some mistake. I have never killed anything in my life." "Well, your house did then," laughed the little people, and they pointed to the ground. "Huh?" Dorothy cried out, because 2 feet inside silver shoes were sticking out from under her house. The old lady explained that the witch had made the Munchkins her slaves, but now she was dead and they were free. The witch had been very, very old, so while they were talking, she dried up and disappeared, leaving the silver shoes empty. The Munchkins gave the shoes to Dorothy and asked her to stay and live with them. When they saw her tears, however, they realized how much she wanted to return to Kansas. "A yellow brick road leads to the Emerald City of Oz," they told her. "There are many dangers on the way, but if you can arrive safely, the Great Wizard of Oz might help you." Then the old woman, who was really the Good Witch of the North, kissed Dorothy and left a mark on her forehead for protection. They waved goodbye to her and she started off. The Scarecrow. Dorothy was now wearing the silver shoes, which tinkled merrily on the yellow bricks. Everything, houses, fences, and clothes, were blue, the Munchkins' favorite color. After a few miles, she climbed on a blue fence to rest. To her surprise, a scarecrow in a cornfield winked at her and said, "How do you do?" "I'm very well, thank you. How are you?" "Not very well," he sighed. "I have to scare crows all day, and it's boring." "Can't you get down?" asked Dorothy. "No. Would you kindly take me off this pole?" Dorothy reached up and lifted him down. He wasn't heavy because he was stuffed with straw.
"Oh, thank you," said the Scarecrow. "What's your name, and where are you going?"
I'm Dorothy, and I'm going to the Emerald City to ask the Great Oz to send me back to Kansas.
"Who is Oz?"
asked the Scarecrow. Don't you know? She exclaimed in surprise. He shook his head sadly.
"I am stuffed, so I have no brains. Do you think Oz could give me some?"
Maybe, said Dorothy. Come along and we'll see. Toto was growling, so she added, Don't mind my dog. He never bites.
"I'm not afraid because he can't hurt straw. There is one thing I'm afraid of, though. Fire."
And off they started together down the yellow brick road. The Tin Woodman. That night, Dorothy and Toto slept in a little empty cottage while the Scarecrow stood in a corner and waited patiently. Next morning, while Dorothy was washing her face in a clear stream, she heard a deep groan.
"Ah!"
Toto barked and snapped at a man made completely of tin. He was standing motionless with his axe in the air. Did you groan? Asked Dorothy.
"Yes,"
he answered mournfully.
"I've been groaning for a year."
Can I help you? Dorothy asked.
"If you'll get the can in my cottage, I'll be all right again."
So Dorothy ran for the can and oiled each of his joints from his neck to his feet. The Tin Woodman lowered his axe and sighed happily. He thanked Dorothy and asked where they were going. When Dorothy told him, he said,
"I have no heart because I lost it long ago during an unhappy love affair. Do you think Oz could give me a new one?"
Come along and we'll see, said Dorothy. So the Tin Woodman shouldered his axe and put his oil can in Dorothy's basket. Then arm in arm, the three new friends went down the yellow brick road. The Cowardly Lion. As they walked along, the Tin Woodman and the Scarecrow tried to decide which was better, a heart or brains. Dorothy didn't know either, but she promised to ask Aunt Em if she ever got back to Kansas. They soon reached a forest with trees and branches too thick to pass. The woodman went to work with his axe and cleared a path. As they entered, they could hear scary noises coming from the dark forest. Nothing could hurt the two men, and Dorothy had the witch's kiss to keep her safe. However, they all agreed to protect little Toto. At that moment, an enormous lion leapt from behind the trees. He was roaring loudly, and he knocked the woodman and the Scarecrow down as he passed. He was just opening his huge mouth to bite Toto when Dorothy picked up the little dog and slapped the lion on his nose. Don't you dare bite Toto! You're a great big coward! She cried. The lion rubbed his nose and looked ashamed. I know I am, he said. I'm supposed to be the king of the beasts, but all I can do is roar. He wiped a tear from his eye with the end of his tail and continued. When there's danger, my heart beats too fast.
"You're lucky to have a heart," said the woodman. "Do you have any brains?"
asked the Scarecrow. I don't know. I've never looked, replied the lion. Come with us to the Emerald City, suggested Dorothy kindly, and maybe the wizard can give you some courage. Next morning, they came to a deep ditch too wide to jump across. The woodman chopped a big tree with his sharp axe, and it fell across the ditch like a bridge. They had just gotten across when they heard a dreadful noise behind them.
It's the Kaladas,
whispered the frightened lion.
They are monsters with tiger heads, bare bodies, and long claws.
The Kaladas had almost crossed the bridge when the woodman quickly chopped away the end of the tree. It crashed to the rocks below, killing the Kaladas. The little group hurried away so fast that Dorothy had to ride on the lion's back. Next they came to a great river. They could see green grass and flowers on the other side, but it was very wide. Again, the woodman used his axe to build a raft. When it was finished, they boarded it, but the river's current was too strong. They drifted downstream, leaving the poor Scarecrow clinging to a pole which was stuck in the mud midstream. Before they went too far, the lion told them to grab his tail, and he sprang into the water and pulled the raft to shore. They missed the Scarecrow as they walked back towards the yellow brick road. Happily, a friendly stork rescued their friend and carried him in its strong claws back to them. Dorothy gave the Scarecrow a welcome hug, and they all continued on. The Deadly Poppy Field. Now they were passing through a thick carpet of colored blossoms. Soon, however, it changed to only scarlet poppies. It's well known that their spicy odor is so powerful that whoever breathes it falls asleep. If the sleeper is not taken away soon, he'll sleep forever. Dorothy didn't know this, and her eyes grew so heavy she couldn't stay awake.
It's the smell of the flowers,
trembled the lion.
I can hardly stay awake myself.
Then run fast,
cried the Scarecrow.
We'll bring the girl, but you are too heavy to carry.
Off dashed the lion, while the others made a seat with their hands and carried Dorothy and Toto out of the poppy field. Unfortunately, the lion hadn't quite reached the end and was sound asleep just inside the field. The woodman and Scarecrow laid Dorothy on the grass near the river where the breeze could wake her up. The Queen of the Field Mice. While they waited, they saw a strange beast with red glowing eyes and sharp teeth chasing a tiny gray field mouse. Although the woodman had no heart, he couldn't let the pretty creature die. So he raised his axe and cut off the beast's head. In a squeaky voice, the mouse said,
Thank you for saving my life. I am the queen of all the field mice.
And sure enough, several mice ran up and bowed to her.
This Tin Man killed the wild cat, so you must obey him always.
We will, they cried.
What can we do?
You can save our friend, the lion, who is asleep in the poppy bed.
A lion?
Screeched the queen.
He'll eat us.
No, no. This lion is a coward,
said the Scarecrow. Then he asked,
How many mice call you queen?
She answered,
Thousands.
He then asked her to call all the mice and tell each one to bring a piece of string. Meantime, the woodman was making a wooden truck and 4 wheels. Dorothy was surprised when she awoke and found herself surrounded by mice. But the Scarecrow explained, and she and the Queen became friends. When all the mice were fastened to the truck with their strings, they pulled like little horses until the truck came near the lion. It was difficult getting him on the truck, but with the Scarecrow and Woodman pushing and the mice pulling, they finally rolled him away from the poppies and onto the grass. As the mice scampered away, the Queen called back,
If you ever need us again, just whistle.
Once more they walked through a lovely countryside. Here the people wore pointed caps like the Munchkins, but everything was green. There was a beautiful green glow in the sky, and the yellow brick road ended at a bright green wall. The gate was studded with emeralds, and the bell rang with a silvery tingle. The gate swung open, and they entered a room glistening with green marble walls. A gateman asked what they wanted.
We've come to see the Great Oz,
said Dorothy. The man looked surprised, but he took some green glass spectacles from a big box and locked a pair on each of them with a golden key. The Wonderful City of Oz. Everything in the Emerald City was green, even the window panes, the sky, and the people's skin. The gateman left them at the palace, and a soldier with green whiskers asked them to wait. Soon he returned and said the Wizard of Oz had agreed to see them, but only one at a time. Dorothy was to be first, so next morning, dressed in a new green gown, she walked bravely into the gorgeous throne room. On the huge throne, sparkling with emeralds, sat an enormous head. It had eyes, nose, and a mouth, but no legs, arms, or hair. The eyes rolled slowly around and looked at her.
I am Oz, the great and terrible,
the mouth said.
Where did you get those silver shoes, and what do you want?
I am Dorothy, she said politely, and I got my shoes when my house killed the Wicked Witch of the East. I want to go home to Kansas. Can you help me, Great Oz?
I won't help you unless you first kill the Wicked Witch of the West.
Oh, no, I can't kill anything willingly. Oh!
She sobbed.
Well, until she's dead, you won't see your uncle and aunt. Just remember, she's very wicked, so she should be killed.
Dorothy returned to her friends and said sadly,
There's no hope for me. Oz won't send me home until I kill the Wicked Witch of the West, which I can never do.
The Scarecrow was next. This time, Oz was a lovely girl with long green curls and a crown of jewels. The Scarecrow asked him for brains, but Oz replied, No brains for you until the witch is dead. A terrible beast with 5 eyes greeted the Tin Woodman, and a ball of fire was waiting for the lion. Both were told they could have no heart and no courage until the witch was dead. The Journey West. They were all downhearted.
What shall we do now?
asked Dorothy.
"We must go to the land of the Winkies and destroy the witch,"
said the lion. So the woodman sharpened his axe and oiled his joints, and the Scarecrow stuffed himself with new straw. The gatemen unlocked and removed their glasses, and they headed west. Their path led through fields of buttercups and daisies, but soon they came to rough, ugly hills. The sun was hot, and there were no houses or trees, so they lay on the grass to rest. Now, the Wicked Witch of the West had only one eye, but it was more powerful than a telescope. When she spied the resting strangers, she became very angry and blew a whistle. Immediately, 10 hungry wolves came running.
"Go tear them to pieces!"
she shrieked. But the woodman saw them coming and killed them all with his axe. When the witch saw the pile of dead wolves, she sent a flock of wild crows to pick their eyes out. But the Scarecrow caught each one and twisted its neck. When the witch saw the pile of dead crows, she sent a swarm of black bees to sting them to death. The Scarecrow covered Dorothy, Toto, and the lion with his straw, and the bees broke their stings when they attacked the woodman. The witch stamped her feet and tore her hair. Finally, she took out her magic golden cap with its circle of diamonds and rubies. Whoever owned it could call the winged monkeys 3 times. She had one more wish, so she put it on and recited the magic poem. A crowd of chattering monkeys with huge, powerful wings surrounded her.
"Go to the strangers and destroy all of them except the lion,"
she demanded.
"He will become my horse."
First, they seized the woodman and dropped him on sharp rocks. Then they pulled all of the straw out of the Scarecrow and threw his head and clothes into a treetop. They were surprised to see the good witch's kiss on Dorothy, so they couldn't hurt her. They carried the lion and Dorothy to the witch's castle. The witch couldn't touch Dorothy either, but she made her work very hard. The witch wanted the silver shoes, but Dorothy never took them off. One day, while Dorothy was working in the kitchen, the witch placed an invisible bar across the floor. Dorothy tripped over it, and one shoe came off. The witch grabbed it and put it on her own skinny foot.
"Give me back my shoe, you wicked creature!"
cried Dorothy. The witch just laughed and said,
"It's mine now, and someday I'll get the other one too."
Dorothy was so angry, she picked up a bucket of water and threw it at the witch. The wicked woman screamed in fear and started to melt away.
"Oh! You knew water would end me! Oh!"
she screeched.
"Of course I didn't,"
said Dorothy. Soon the witch became just a brown, wet spot on the floor. Dorothy threw more water on the mess and swept it out the door. The Winkies, who had been the witch's slaves, cheered and were free at last. The Rescues. Dorothy asked the yellow Winkies to rescue their friends. They found the Tin Woodman on the rocks and tenderly carried him back to the castle. He was battered and rusty, but they shined and oiled him, and in 3 days he was like new. Then they found the tall tree where the Scarecrow's clothes were thrown. The woodman's axe had a new gold handle, and he chopped down the tree. The Winkies made a new suit and stuffed the Scarecrow with fresh straw. Now they were all together again, and they spent several enjoyable days in the comfortable yellow castle. But one day Dorothy said,
"We must return to Oz to get the woodman's heart, the Scarecrow's brains, and the lion's courage. Also, I shall get back to Kansas."
And she clapped her hands happily. The Winkies were sorry, but they presented each with a beautiful gift. They were gold collars for Toto and the lion, and a walking stick for the Scarecrow, and a jeweled oil can for the woodman, and the witch's golden cap for Dorothy. The friends started off towards the east, but before long they became lost. Dorothy remembered the little whistle the Queen had given her. She blew it, and soon the mice came running.
"Why don't you call the winged monkeys?"
squeaked the Queen.
"The magic poem is inside the golden cap. Won't they hurt us?"
asked Dorothy.
"Oh, no! They must obey the wearer of the cap."
And off she scampered. Dorothy read the directions carefully, put on the cap, and recited the magic poem. Suddenly, the winged monkeys arrived, asking,
"Choo, choo, 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 wah, wah, wah. What is your command?"
Soon, they were all being carried swiftly through the air to the Emerald City. They were gently set down by the green gate, and the monkeys disappeared. Discovery of Oz, the Terrible. The gateman was surprised to see them. He locked on their glasses again and led them to the palace. They expected to meet the wizard right away, but several days passed. Finally, they became impatient and threatened to call the winged monkeys to help them if he didn't appear. Next morning, they were invited into the throne room, but no one was in sight. A loud voice came from the empty throne, saying,
"What do you want?"
Dorothy answered,
"You promised to give the Scarecrow brains, the Tin Woodman a heart, the lion some courage, and to send me back to Kansas if we killed the witch. Well, I melted her, so now you must keep your promise."
The lion agreed with such a loud roar that poor Toto jumped out of Dorothy's arms and knocked over a large screen. There, behind the screen, stood a little wrinkled man. He started shaking and said,
"No, don't bite me. I am Oz." "We thought you were a great head, or a lovely lady, or a terrible beast, or a ball of fire,"
cried the astonished friends.
"Now, I have been making believe. I know many tricks, and I'm a ventriloquist. I can throw my voice anywhere." "You are a humbug,"
cried Dorothy.
"Yes, but you four are the only ones who know it. I came here in a balloon long ago, and the people thought I was a great wizard. I built this city for them, and they are very happy." "You are a very bad man,"
said Dorothy.
No, I'm a very good man, but I'm a very bad wizard." "Can you keep your promises to us?"
asked Dorothy.
"I'll try, if you'll promise to keep my secret."
Next day, the wizard emptied the Scarecrow's head and filled it with a mixture of bran and pins. The pins stuck out everywhere, so now he was very sharp. Next, he cut a hole in the Tin Woodman's breast and filled it with a pretty silk heart. The woodman was greatly pleased. For the lion, he poured liquid from a green bottle into a golden dish. The lion didn't like the smell, but he drank it.
"How do you feel?"
asked Oz.
"Full of courage,"
roared the lion joyfully. The biggest problem was Dorothy's return to Kansas. She waited and waited until finally she was called by the wizard. He told her he was tired of being a humbug, so he suggested they fly back to Kansas together in a balloon. The next few days, they were busy cutting and sewing bright strips of silk. When the balloon was finished, they attached it to a big clothes basket. Meantime, the woodman had chopped wood for a fire to make hot air. Finally, the day came when all the Emerald City residents watched as the balloon swelled. The wizard hid in the basket and called in a loud voice,
I am going away. Now the Scarecrow is your ruler. Obey him.
The balloon was getting bigger, and the wizard called to Dorothy to hurry, but she was chasing Toto, who was chasing a kitten. The wizard held out his hands and called again.
Hurry!
But crack! The ropes broke and the balloon drifted away without her.
"Come back!"
Dorothy screamed.
I can't. Goodbye!
Oz called, and he sailed away forever. Away to the south. Dorothy wept bitterly. The Scarecrow invited her to stay in the Emerald City, but she wanted to go home. They called the winged monkeys, but even they couldn't help. Finally, the green-whiskered soldier suggested they visit the Good Witch of the South, Glinda. So after saying farewell and returning the glasses, they started happily on their way. They had many adventures before arriving at their destination. They were fighting trees that the woodman cut down, and a walk through a town where everything and everybody was made of breakable china. When horrible creatures with hammerheads and long necks that shot out of their bodies attacked them, Dorothy put on the golden cap for the last time. The monkeys carried them to the Quadling country, where houses, bridges, and fences were all painted red. At the gate of Glinda's castle, red uniformed soldier girls greeted them and took them to rooms where they could make themselves presentable. Glinda was very young and very beautiful, with long red hair and blue eyes. She wore a pure white dress and sat on a throne of rubies. Dorothy told her their story and how her greatest wish was to return to Kansas. Glinda kissed her and promised to help, but first she asked Dorothy to give her the golden cap. Dorothy gave it to her gladly. Then Glinda asked Dorothy's 3 friends what they would do when she left.
I will return to the Emerald City,
said the Scarecrow.
"The Winkies were kind to me and asked me to rule over them, so I will go to the West Country,"
said the Tin Woodman.
"I will live in the great forest and become king of the beasts,"
said the Lion. Glinda smiled and said, "Then I will use the golden cap to ask the monkeys to take each one of you to your destination." They all thanked her, and Dorothy said,
"You are as kind as you are beautiful. But how do I get back to Kansas?"
Glinda laughed musically.
"Oh,
You could have gone at any time," The silver shoes will take you there. Knock the heels together 3 times, and they will carry you wherever you want to go." Dorothy kissed the lion's big head and dried the Tin Woodman's tears with her hanky. She hugged the soft body of the Scarecrow, and then, taking Toto in her arms, she clapped her heels together 3 times and said,
"Take me to Aunt Hem."
Instantly, she was whirling through the air and then rolling over the soft grass. Her silver shoes were gone. Toto ran excitedly towards Uncle Henry, who was milking cows. Just then, Aunt Em came out of their house, newly built since the tornado. When she saw Dorothy, she exclaimed,
"My darling child, where did you come from?"
and she folded Dorothy in the warm arms.
"I've come from the land of Oz, Aunt Em, and oh, I'm so glad to be home."